the burden of intelligence and the pain of seeing too much. To be conscious is not to be in control. It is to be burdened with awareness. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where today we explore a profound truth. The deeper your intelligence, the heavier the weight you often carry. In this video, we'll uncover why those who see too much, feel too deeply, and understand too quickly often walk a lonelier path, and how you can transform that pain into personal power. These insights aren't just for reflection, they're for transformation. So as you watch, think about how Jung's wisdom applies to your own life. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by your own awareness? Comment below and share your experience. Let's grow together. 1. The quiet cost of clarity. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly sensed what wasn't being said? The tension behind a smile, the quiet sorrow behind someone's eyes, the subtle disconnect between words and truth. This is not imagination. This is spiritual sensitivity. And while it can feel like a gift, it often comes with a silent cost. In a world that praises surface-level ease and polite ignorance, seeing deeply is not always welcomed. Yet spiritual wisdom tells us, your depth is not a flaw, it's your soul's compass. To carry truths no one else sees is to walk with a silent ache, an ache born not from delusion, but from the depth of clarity itself. When you can sense the emotional temperature of a room, pick up on what's unspoken, or feel energy shift before a word is said, you're not just observant. You're tuned into a spiritual frequency that most ignore. This awareness, this heightened perception, is a kind of inner sight, one that reveals more than just the surface. But with that sight comes the quiet burden of pretending not to see. You laugh, you engage, you play your role in society's performance, even while your inner world floods with truths no one is ready to hear. The exhaustion doesn't stem from the clarity, it stems from the suppression. Day after day, holding back your knowledge creates a fracture within. The more you mask your insight to maintain social harmony, the more distant you feel from yourself. Carl Jung understood this deeply. Loneliness, he wrote, does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. It's a spiritual dissonance being surrounded, yet alone, being celebrated, yet unseen. Society doesn't reward your awareness, it rewards your silence. Your ability to fit in becomes more valued than your authenticity. You're loved for your adaptability, not for your truth. This is the quiet pain of the gifted, the intuitive, the emotionally intelligent. You begin to question yourself. Should I stay quiet to be accepted? Should I dull my senses to feel normal again? But what if your depth is not a flaw, but your compass? Spiritual wisdom teaches that clarity is not a curse, it's a call. A call to live from what you see, not to hide from it. The more you numb yourself to appease the world, the more disconnected you become from your soul. Yet, when you choose to honor your vision, even if no one else understands it, you reclaim your power. Seeing the truth in others means also seeing the truth in yourself. The moment you stop asking the world to validate your perception, you begin to embody the strength that was always within. You realize you were never meant to be understood by everyone. You were meant to understand yourself so fully that their understanding becomes unnecessary. This is the heart of spiritual awakening, not a glamorous revelation, but a sacred rupture. A moment where you can no longer tolerate betraying yourself just to make others comfortable. Jung reminds us, your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. And that awakening isn't always soft. It asks you to let go of illusions and lean into the rawness of your own awareness. But in that rawness lies your freedom. The pain of seeing too much was never meant to break you. It was meant to guide you back to yourself. And once you follow it, you may discover that your gift was never the problem. The only burden was believing you had to hide it. And if you feel inspired by this message, type, "I trust the process," as a way to affirm your strength, patience, and commitment to growth. Let's grow together. 2. The invisible weight of perception. They say knowledge is power, but Carl Jung offered a deeper insight. Knowledge without understanding and awareness without support can feel like a curse, especially for those who perceive more than they're expected to, who feel more than they're allowed to express, and who walk through life noticing details others ignore. This isn't about being better or superior. It's about carrying the quiet, spiritual burden of heightened perception. And many men carry it in silence. In today's world, being a man who sees deeply can feel like a curse disguised as insight. You walk into rooms and sense unspoken tension. You hear what isn't being said. You see pain behind perfect smiles. You speak your truth, only to be told you're overanalyzing, too sensitive, or imagining things. And so, little by little, you begin to censor yourself. You shrink your observations. You dim your intuition just to belong. But this is not a sign of weakness. It is the invisible weight of spiritual intelligence. Carl Jung understood this well. He believed that those who carry such insight are often misjudged as distant or melancholic, not because they dislike others, but because they cannot connect through superficiality. Their minds are decoding hidden meaning, their hearts tuned to subtle emotional vibrations. And while the world rewards distraction and fast talk, these men crave the quiet where real truth lives. They are not broken. They are simply awake. Yet awakening is not always a joyful revelation. It can be an isolating journey. When you can no longer unsee what you've seen, when your soul is no longer satisfied with shallow interaction, you begin to live in a different rhythm, one that feels out of sync with the world around you. Still, this clarity is not meant to exile you. It is meant to refine you. Your awareness is not a flaw. It is a compass, pointing you toward your deeper path. You are not too much. You are exactly enough. You are what the world needs. Men who feel, who question, who lead not through force, but through presence. Men who are not afraid of complexity, who sit with discomfort, who seek truth even when it's inconvenient. Carl Jung taught that the journey of individuation, becoming your truest self, is the highest form of spiritual evolution. That journey begins when you stop betraying your sensitivity to meet the world's expectations, when you stop pretending that being numb is strength. If you've ever felt like an outsider in a room full of noise, if you've ever offered insight and been met with blank stares or rejection, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're tuned in. And though this path may feel lonely at times, you are not alone. There is a quiet brotherhood of awakened men, those who have chosen truth over illusion and integrity over approval. You are walking among them, whether you know it yet or not. So what can you do with this sacred sensitivity? First, stop apologizing for it. Your ability to feel deeply, to perceive intuitively, and to think critically is not a liability. It's your superpower. Second, protect your energy and choose depth over popularity. You won't resonate with everyone. That's okay. But the few who do see you, truly see you, will be mirrors of your soul. And third, let your insight guide your healing. Turn your perception inward. Deconstruct the myths of manhood that taught you to suppress, hide, or harden. Rebuild from the truth. Let your pain be alchemical. Let it transform you. Because this is not the end of your story. It's the sacred beginning. Your awakening may have started in silence, but it's meant to lead you into purpose, into presence, into peace. True strength is not about how much you endure, but how clearly you see and how bravely you live from that vision. If you resonate with this message, comment below. I embrace this energy. 3. The Thema and Animus, inner archetypes that haunt and heal. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This isn't just a philosophical idea, it's a spiritual truth that lies at the heart of inner transformation. When we live unaware of our inner forces, we become puppets to unseen patterns. But when we wake up, when we begin our spiritual awakening, we reclaim authorship over our lives. A key part of Jung's spiritual wisdom revolves around two powerful archetypes, the Thema and the Animus. These aren't just abstract symbols. They are living forces inside every one of us. The Thema is the feminine aspect that exists within every man. It speaks in emotions, dreams, moods, and intuitions. The Animus is the masculine side found in every woman, revealing itself through ideas, beliefs, logic, and opinions. These inner figures shape how you love, how you argue, how you view others, and most importantly, how you see yourself. Have you ever felt an intense pull towards someone you barely knew? Or maybe you reacted too strongly to a small situation and didn't know why. Those aren't coincidences. Often, that's your unconscious anima or animus projecting a deep unmet need, an old wound, or a forgotten emotion onto the person in front of you. In truth, you might not be seeing them clearly at all. You might just be seeing a mirror of your inner world. That's the first whisper of a spiritual awakening. The realization that what you experience outside often reflects what's unresolved within. If we ignore these inner energies, chaos follows. A man ruled by his unconscious anima may fall into emotional confusion, chase unavailable partners, or misinterpret longing for love. A woman overtaken by her unconscious animus may become overly critical, emotionally detached, or confuse control with strength. Jung warned us, these archetypes carry a kind of fatal force. If left unchecked, they can fracture relationships, erode self-worth, and pass down suffering through generations. But here's the beauty of this spiritual wisdom. What once haunted you can become your greatest guide. When the anima is integrated, a man finds emotional depth, creativity, and empathy. When a woman embraces her animus, she gains clarity, inner stability, and a powerful presence not from ego, but from soul. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about becoming whole. This process, this inward journey, is the essence of spiritual awakening. It begins when you start listening to your inner voices, questioning why you crave certain people, why you fear certain outcomes, or why the same emotional patterns keep repeating. As you do, your relationships change too. You no longer chase people to fill a void. You no longer argue to dominate. You connect. You communicate. You love with presence instead of projection. So ask yourself, what emotional patterns keep looping in your life? What story keeps repeating in your heart? Could it be that your anima or animus is silently at work? If so, now is the time to face it, not with fear, but with curiosity. Not with resistance, but with compassion. Because once you do, you unlock the map Jung left for all of us, a way to turn confusion into clarity, pain into purpose, and projection into peace. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like this video and share it with others who might need these great values. Let's continue this conversation and go deeper into what these values really mean. 4. The pain of silence and self-shrinking. There is a unique kind of sorrow that comes not from confusion, but from clarity. The kind of pain only those with deep intelligence and spiritual wisdom truly understand. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Yet for many, that privilege feels like a burden. When you begin to perceive the quiet lies that lubricate daily conversation, the masks people wear just to be accepted, and the subtle betrayals of authenticity we commit in order to survive, it doesn't make you feel wise, it makes you feel lonely. The more you see, the less you can't unsee. And the more you know, the harder it becomes to say it out loud. You begin to notice this pattern. The more awake you become, the more you feel the pressure to stay silent. Not because you lack courage, but because your clarity feels like a disruption in a world addicted to comfort. So you shrink. You soften your words. You nod when you want to challenge. And slowly, your light begins to dim, not because it faded, but because you learned it was safer to hide it. But spiritual wisdom isn't meant to be shelved. It's meant to be shared. Think for a moment. Have you ever swallowed a truth just to avoid unsettling the room? Maybe you downplayed your intuition, masked your brilliance, or kept quiet so others wouldn't feel small. I remember speaking with a gifted designer who carried an almost mystical sense of creative insight. He could intuit what a project needed long before anyone else caught on. But his ideas were met with eye rolls and silence. "It's easier to let them fail than to feel like a threat," he said to me, his voice not angry, but tired. His spirit wasn't broken from failure, but from fatigue. That's the wound many sensitive, spiritually awakened individuals carry, not being misunderstood, but being dismissed. And this dismissal leads to a silent exile. You're physically present, yet spiritually absent. You're breathing, but not fully alive. You begin to feel like an outsider to your own life. But let me remind you, your depth is not a defect. Your insight is not too much. In fact, it might be the very medicine the world is thirsting for. Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Spiritual growth, then, becomes not a luxury, but a necessity. It's how we reclaim the pieces of ourselves we abandoned just to fit in. It's how we return home to the soul. So let me ask you, where in your life have you been shrinking to stay safe? And what would shift if you chose to expand instead? If today you honored your clarity, your spiritual wisdom, your sacred knowing, what new reality might emerge? The greatest spiritual teachers never dimmed themselves to make others comfortable. They bore the burden of truth, even when it cost them approval. And now, that path is calling you too, not just to know, but to embody. Not just to see, but to be seen. The next time your truth rises in your throat, don't silence it. Breathe through the fear. Speak it not to dominate, but to liberate. Because your voice may be the exact vibration that awakens another soul. Spread this wonderful energy by commenting below. This woke people up. 5. The Cassandra Curse. Knowing too much, too soon. They called her Cassandra, the ancient prophetess cursed to always tell the truth but never be believed. And perhaps you felt a bit like her too. You see what others can't, feel storms before they gather, sense betrayals before they break. It's not paranoia, it's perception. Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, understood this deeply. He once said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." An awakening, my friend, is rarely comfortable. In fact, it can be a lonely road. When your spiritual awakening sharpens your awareness and pulls you ahead of the crowd, people don't always celebrate that. They question you. They push back. They tell you to stop overthinking, to lighten up. But inside, you know something real is happening. You're not unstable. You're ahead of your time. And like Cassandra, you carry the burden of seeing too much too soon. What many call anxiety or intensity is often just unrecognized insight. You see patterns, financial shifts, relationship breakdowns, emotional spirals before they show up in the physical world. It's like being a few chapters ahead in a book that everyone else is still just beginning. But what happens when you try to speak up? You get labeled dramatic, negative, even arrogant. And that's the real curse, not the vision itself, but the isolation it creates. You're not just managing what you know, you're managing how others react to your knowledge. This is especially hard for men, between 30 and 65 men who have responsibilities, families, careers, because the world often doesn't leave room for them to express emotional intelligence or intuitive perception. But denying it doesn't make it disappear. It just buries your gifts under layers of silence, frustration, or worse, self-doubt. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that awareness is a form of leadership. And in many ways, those with deep perception are spiritual scouts for the tribe. You walk ahead. You light the path. But you also take the hits first. It's no wonder you feel exhausted at times, or tempted to turn it off. But you can't, can you? Because the truth keeps knocking, and the soul keeps listening. This is the pain of awakening, not just waking up, but doing so while the rest of the world still sleeps. Still, there's beauty in this burden, because eventually, someone listens. Someone sees the trail you've blazed, and your once dismissed warnings become someone else's salvation. So the next time you feel the ache of knowing too much too soon, remember this: you were not cursed, you were chosen. Chosen to hold the uncomfortable truths, to speak them anyway, and to stand in your clarity even when others don't understand it yet. This is your spiritual strength, not your flaw. And the more you learn to trust it, the more peace you'll find in walking your own way. Now let me ask you, have you ever been dismissed for sensing the truth before others? If so, you're not alone. And your voice, no matter how long it's been silenced, still matters. Let it rise. Let it lead. Because your spiritual awakening isn't a mistake, it's your calling. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. What is your perspective on the importance of this value? Share your insights, and let's continue this conversation. 6. The King and the Poisoned Well. Fitting in versus staying true. Have you ever felt the tension between belonging and being true to yourself? Let me share with you a powerful parable, the story of the wise king and the poisoned well. In this tale, the kingdom's water supply becomes tainted, driving the people to madness. The wise king, having his own clean source, remains sane but quickly becomes seen as the outsider, the strange one. To avoid exile, he eventually drinks from the same poisoned well as the people, just to be accepted again. Now ask yourself, how many times in your life have you been tempted to drink from the poisoned well? Carl Jung saw this not as a myth, but as a deeply symbolic reflection of what happens when individuals with deep perception face the pressure to fit in. In today's world, that pressure is everywhere. Whether it's toning down your insights in meetings, pretending not to see the cracks in relationships, or staying silent about what you truly feel, the inner conflict is real. Do you conform to keep your place in the group, or do you risk isolation by speaking the truth that only you can see? Jung believed that spiritual growth demands something rare: solitude, honesty with oneself, and the courage to walk the lonely path of individuation. He warned that the moment we betray what we know to be true inside just to avoid being different, we begin to lose ourselves. And the irony? The more awakened your vision, the lonelier the path may seem at first. But the reward is clarity, alignment, and the peace of knowing that your life is built on truth, not performance. Think of the entrepreneur who senses a deeper purpose behind his business, but is mocked for slowing down to reflect. Or the woman who sees through family dysfunction, yet stays silent to keep the peace. Or the teenager who senses the emptiness behind social media validation, but fears being seen as strange if they step back. These are modern-day kings and queens facing the poisoned well. So let me ask you, where in your life are you sipping from a well that no longer nourishes your spirit? Where have you traded truth for acceptance, and how is that affecting your peace? The spiritual path is not always about escaping the world, but about transforming your place in it. Jung taught that individuation, the development of your truest self, is the soul's deepest purpose. And it begins when you stop apologizing for your clarity, when you stop shrinking away to fit in, and when you begin to honor your own vision, no matter how misunderstood it may seem. Yes, you may feel alone at first, but what you are really doing is clearing the fog so that others can finally see. Show your determination on this journey by commenting below. I keep moving forward. 7. The burden as a beacon. From suffering to leadership. Have you ever felt like your awareness is both a blessing and a burden? Carl Jung once described the process of individuation not just as a path to self-understanding, but as a spiritual awakening, an alchemical transformation of pain into power. If you've lived with the weight of deep perception, seeing through lies, feeling truths others ignore, recognizing the spiritual fractures in conversations that seem surface level, then you've likely carried that burden in silence. But what if that very burden wasn't just meant to isolate you, but to awaken you? What if it's not just a weight, but a key to something bigger than yourself? You see, the journey towards spiritual leadership doesn't begin with applause or clarity. It starts with confusion, isolation, and often unbearable sensitivity. But here's the truth. When you stop apologizing for your intensity, when you stop dimming your light just to fit into rooms too small for your soul, something shifts. You begin to see that your depth is not a defect, it's a direction. And when you honor that truth with courage, your very presence becomes a lantern in the dark for others walking the same path. The burden, once your private wilderness, transforms into a bridge, a place where your lived experiences, your wounds, and your wisdom meet the longing of others for guidance and truth. And this is where the pain takes on purpose. Because through your spiritual awakening, you no longer lead with answers, but with presence. You no longer chase approval, but attract resonance. You draw in people who aren't intimidated by your clarity, but drawn to it. The moment you fully accept your role, not as someone who fixes, but someone who reflects, is the moment your suffering becomes sacred. And in today's modern world, where distractions scream louder than inner truths, we need more men who lead from that place. We need more men who have seen too much, felt too deeply, and still choose to walk with compassion instead of bitterness. So I ask you, how would your life change if you stopped seeing your burden as a curse and started seeing it as your calling? How would your relationships shift if you spoke your truth not for validation, but as an offering? This isn't about perfection or pretending to have it all figured out. It's about stepping into spiritual maturity with authenticity, grounded in the knowledge that leadership isn't about being followed, but about being real. Jung's wisdom teaches us that when you embrace the full spectrum of your inner life, the shadows and the light, you become not just healed, but whole. And wholeness is magnetic. It doesn't demand attention, it inspires it. So if you're a man in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s, carrying that quiet knowing in your bones, know this: your journey matters. Your spiritual burden is not the end of your story, it's the beginning of your legacy. Let it be the reason others find the courage to begin theirs. If this message speaks to you, take it a step further and share it with someone who might need this reminder. Together, we can build connections rooted in honesty and respect. And so, perhaps the real weight of intelligence isn't just knowing too much, it's feeling too deeply, seeing what others can't, and carrying truths that the world often refuses to acknowledge. But in that burden lies your spiritual gift. If you've ever felt misunderstood because of your depth, remember, your awareness is not a curse. It's a call to inner mastery and compassionate wisdom. If this message spoke to something within you, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more content that nourishes your soul. Hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next video, because your journey of awakening is just getting started. The universe isolated you for a reason. Don't despair. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Carl Jung. Have you ever felt like the world has quietly stepped back, leaving you in a space of deep solitude? In today's episode on Spiritual Wisdom, we dive into why the universe may have isolated you, not as punishment, but as preparation for something greater. Carl Jung believed that moments of isolation are often sacred invitations to meet your true self. So, if you're walking this path alone right now, know that it has a purpose. Comment below, "I embrace the silence," if you're ready to discover the hidden wisdom within your solitude. Let's grow through what we go through together. 1. Solitude is not a punishment. It's a sacred invitation. There's a particular ache that comes with being alone. Not a physical pain, but something deeper, more existential. It feels like life has paused you while the rest of the world continues. And in that pause, a silent question arises. Why me? But what if solitude isn't life punishing you, but rather preparing you? According to Carl Jung, isolation isn't something to fear, it's something to revere. It is not abandonment by the universe, but an initiation into deeper consciousness, a sacred turning point meant to awaken the truest parts of your soul. When the universe isolates you, it's often because something inside of you is beginning to shift. The old ways no longer fit. The noise of your surroundings, the roles you used to play, and even the people you once leaned on all begin to dissolve. And in their place, silence, stillness, emptiness. This isn't a mistake. It's an act of spiritual precision. The soul cannot grow in chaos. So the universe strips everything away until only the essence remains. It removes distractions so you can finally hear the voice within. It closes the doors so you are forced to turn inward, not out of cruelty, but because your next chapter requires a version of you that cannot be built in comfort. This sacred solitude reveals the truth. You are not what the world says you are. You are not defined by your job, your relationships, or your past. In this space of detachment, the illusion of identity begins to crumble. The masks fall, the personas fade, and beneath it all, you meet yourself. Truly, deeply, honestly. That meeting is raw. It's uncomfortable. It's vulnerable. But it's necessary. Because only in this space can real transformation occur. Carl Jung believed that healing comes not from running away from pain, but from facing it directly. That's why the universe doesn't whisper, it isolates. In this isolation, spiritual wisdom teaches that we begin to unlearn. We unlearn the habits of pleasing others. We unlearn the need for constant validation. We unlearn the addiction to being seen, liked, praised. And in that unlearning, something beautiful begins to emerge. Authenticity. When no one is watching, you begin to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. You rediscover your quiet passions, your childlike curiosity, your inner peace. This is the true alchemy of solitude. It doesn't just strip away what is false, it strengthens what is real. But the process isn't easy. It's tempting to resist, to reach back for the noise, the familiarity, the comfort. Yet spiritual wisdom reminds us that growth and discomfort walk hand in hand. You cannot expand and stay the same. You cannot awaken and remain asleep to your truth. So the universe allows the loneliness, the silence, the disconnection not to break you, but to build you. You are not being left behind. You are being set apart. Sometimes the people around you can't walk where you're going. They can't understand your inner shifts. They may even fall away. And that's okay. Isolation isn't always about physical aloneness. It's about energetic separation. Your frequency is changing, and what no longer resonates will naturally fall away. This is not rejection. It's a redirect. The universe is creating space for alignment, for deeper love, for higher purpose, for soul truth. In the eyes of the world, it may look like you're falling apart, but spiritually, you are being reborn. In the eyes of others, you may seem distant, but internally, you're being drawn closer to yourself. This is the hidden grace of solitude. It's not a void. It's a womb, a place of creation, a quiet, sacred chamber where your soul can rest, reflect, and rise. If you're in that space now, between who you were and who you're becoming, hold on, trust the silence, honor the stillness, and know that the universe didn't forget you. It chose you. It set you apart so you could become everything you were meant to be, without the noise, the pressure, or the illusion. You are not being punished. You are being prepared for something greater, something truer, something deeply and irrevocably aligned with who you really are. Comment below. I honor this season of solitude. Let this be your affirmation and your beginning. 2. True transformation happens in silence and discomfort. We often assume that growth must feel good. That spiritual evolution should come wrapped in peace, clarity, and joy. But the truth is, transformation is rarely gentle. It doesn't happen in a room full of people or in the warmth of constant affirmation. It begins in the shadows, where distractions fade, masks fall off, and you're left face to face with your raw, unfiltered self. It's in this sacred solitude that something ancient inside of you begins to awaken. The soul doesn't evolve through noise, it deepens in silence. And that silence, while painful, is also holy. Buddha found enlightenment beneath a tree, sitting alone for days in stillness. Jesus withdrew into the desert, away from the world, to hear the voice of God. These weren't passive retreats. They were sacred passages, rituals of isolation through which truth could rise uncontaminated by the world's illusions. Carl Jung understood this too. He taught that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires separation. A breaking away from external influence so that your inner voice, the authentic self, buried beneath conditioning, can finally speak. When life isolates you, it's not cruelty, it's initiation. The universe is peeling away the layers that no longer belong to you. In the stillness, you may feel forgotten. You may feel abandoned. But in reality, you're being pulled inward into a space where your deepest truths can surface. Solitude becomes a mirror reflecting back everything you've tried to avoid. Old wounds, false identities, suppressed desires. This is why it hurts. Not because you're alone, but because you're finally seeing yourself clearly. There's a man named Alex who experienced this firsthand. He lost his job, his partner, and his sense of purpose all in the same season. At first, he panicked. The silence was unbearable. He tried to distract himself by scrolling through social media, binge-watching shows, filling every moment with noise. But the void only grew louder. Eventually, something shifted. He started walking without his phone. He wrote letters to himself. He stopped seeking answers and simply listened. And in that stillness, he heard a whisper, soft but steady. It told him he was not lost. He was becoming. Carl Jung believed that the psyche has its own intelligence, and it draws us into solitude not to punish us, but to prepare us. The ego hates silence because it can't hide there. It thrives on identity, on roles, on recognition. But the soul is nourished by truth, and truth only blooms in quiet soil. That's why the universe isolates you. It's not exile, it's excavation. You are being stripped down so you can rise up, not as a version of who you think you should be, but as the person you were always meant to become. So if you're in the middle of a season where everything feels like it's falling apart, take a breath. The falling apart is sacred. It's not the end of your story, it's the unraveling of the false self. What remains after the unraveling is real, it's pure, it's you. Solitude, when seen through the lens of spiritual wisdom, is not loneliness. It's clarity. It's initiation. It's the womb of reinvention. Carl Jung reminded us, who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. And perhaps this is your awakening, not in the way you expected, not with light and celebration, but with silence and surrender. You are not being hidden. You are being held. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Are you embracing the silence where true transformation begins? If you're ready to grow through stillness and discomfort, comment below. I will meditate and commit to your sacred journey inward. 3. Individuation, discovering the authentic self. Jung taught that the path to individuation, the discovery of your authentic self, rarely happens in community or comfort. It unfolds in solitude, where distractions dissolve and the truth begins to rise to the surface. When the world falls silent and you're left with nothing but your thoughts and emotions, you begin to confront the roles you've played, the expectations you've absorbed, and the false identities you've worn to survive. This peeling away is not destruction, it is revelation. And while it may feel like you are unraveling, what's actually happening is that you are finally being shown what no longer belongs to you. Solitude, though painful at first, is not punishment. It is preparation. It's the sacred ground where spiritual awakening takes root, not in noise, not in chaos, but in stillness. You begin to feel the dissonance between your inner truth and the outer life you've built. What once felt normal suddenly feels unbearable. Shallow conversations drain you. Old goals lose their meaning. And without warning, you find yourself withdrawing, not because you're giving up, but because you're waking up. The soul needs silence to speak. And now, in this silence, it's finally being heard. The discomfort you feel is the friction between the self you've been taught to be and the self you were born to become. Most people never meet their true self because they never dare to leave the version of themselves the world handed them. But Jung believed that this confrontation was not optional, it was essential. As he said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that privilege demands courage, because facing yourself means facing the parts you've buried, avoided, or feared. Yet it is only by looking inward that you can begin to heal. This process isn't clean or linear. It doesn't look like instant clarity or overnight peace. Sometimes it looks like grief for the person you no longer want to be. Sometimes it feels like losing everything you once thought mattered. But within that loss is something sacred, the space to rebuild not from fear, but from truth. The universe doesn't isolate you to break you. It isolates you to break the illusions. It separates you so that you stop identifying with what's not real. That job, that relationship, that environment, they may have served a chapter of your life, but they are not your identity. In isolation, you begin to remember. And this remembering is the gateway to transformation. Suddenly, your intuition grows louder. Your dreams become clearer. Your boundaries sharpen. You begin to choose differently, not to please others, but to protect your peace. You're no longer interested in proving your worth, because you've tasted what it means to simply be. This is the shift Jung pointed to. Individuation isn't about becoming someone new. It's about returning to who you were before the world told you who to be. You're not alone in this. Every spiritual teacher who's ever awakened has walked through this dark night of the soul. Jesus fasted in the desert. the Buddha faced his shadows beneath the Bodhi tree. Their awakenings came not during applause, but in isolation. You too have been called into this sacred space, not as a punishment, but as an invitation. The invitation to strip away what is false, to reclaim what is real, to begin again aligned, awake, and whole. Leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more powerful insights on your journey of self-discovery. Comment below, "I am ready to become my true self," if you're committed to embracing your authentic path. 4. Shadow work emerges during isolation. In the stillness of isolation, something sacred begins to unfold. The distractions of the outer world fade, and what rises to the surface are not random emotions, but unhealed parts of yourself quietly asking for attention. Fear, sadness, shame, anger. These aren't signs that something is wrong with you. According to Carl Jung, they are the shadow, repressed aspects of your psyche that, when ignored, distort your perception and drain your energy. But when faced with courage, they become the doorway to healing, integration, and true personal power. Spiritual wisdom teaches that solitude is not a punishment, but a mirror. In the absence of noise, you are left with only your thoughts, and in that silence, the truth begins to speak. You start to notice patterns, the way you react to pain, the stories you tell yourself, the wounds you've covered with smiles or silence. These realizations can be painful, even disorienting, but they are necessary, because healing begins not with pretending everything is okay, but with seeing clearly what is not. And it is in isolation that this clarity is born. This is shadow work in its rawest form, not a ritual, not a technique, but a deep confrontation with what you've suppressed. You may feel broken at first, but in truth, you are being broken open. What hurts is not the shadow itself, but the resistance to feeling what has long been buried. When you stop running from these emotions and allow yourself to feel them fully, they begin to shift. What was once fear becomes wisdom. What was once anger becomes a boundary. What was once sadness becomes compassion. This is the alchemy of spiritual growth, turning pain into power through presence. Jung believed that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life, and you will call it fate. Isolation forces that confrontation. It strips away the illusions you've clung to and invites you to meet your authentic self, not the version shaped by societal expectations, but the soul that existed before the world told you who to be. And in meeting that self, you begin to remember your purpose. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, and move through life with a quiet, grounded confidence that comes from inner alignment. Many of the world's greatest spiritual leaders walked through deep solitude before stepping into their light. They faced their shadows not to become perfect, but to become whole. And this, too, is your invitation. What you're feeling now is not weakness. It's the beginning of wisdom. The universe isn't punishing you. It's preparing you. What feels like a breakdown is actually a sacred breakthrough. The silence you sit in now may be the most honest conversation your soul has ever had. And through it, you are not being diminished. You are being rebuilt. If this message has awakened something deep within you, leave a comment of courage. I embrace my shadow to become whole. And if this journey speaks to your soul, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another moment of spiritual wisdom and healing. 5. The purpose of solitude is inner rebuilding, not rejection. Solitude often feels like a door closing. The silence becomes thick, and the absence of people can stir feelings of rejection. But solitude is not life turning away from you. It's life turning you toward yourself. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." This reveals a profound truth. You are not being abandoned. You are being invited inward. When the world grows quiet around you, it is because your soul is being asked to speak louder. In our fast-paced lives, filled with noise and distraction, solitude can seem unnatural, even threatening. But it is precisely in that space, stripped of external validation, that your real transformation begins. Life removes the noise not to punish you, but to prepare you. It knows that clarity is born in quiet, that true strength is forged in stillness. You are not being erased, you are being reassembled. Carl Jung believed that individuation, the process of discovering your true self, requires distance from societal expectations. It's a sacred unraveling, where old identities fall away so your essence can emerge. Solitude is the container for this process. It is where your unhealed emotions rise to the surface, not to torment you, but to be seen, felt, and finally released. What feels like loneliness is often the birthplace of wholeness. Think about the moments in your life when everything paused, the heartbreaks, the job losses, the quiet nights when no one called. Weren't those also the moments when something deep inside began to stir? When you were forced to sit with your truth, and in doing so, discovered strength you didn't know you had. That wasn't just a coincidence. That was life carving you into someone deeper, more aligned with your soul. Take the story of a woman who lost her job after 10 years of non-stop hustle. For months, she sat in silence, wrestling with feelings of failure. But that space gave birth to something unexpected, her long-forgotten passion for helping others. She started sharing her healing journey online, eventually creating a platform that now supports thousands. Her greatest breakdown became her breakthrough, and it started in the quiet. When the universe isolates you, it's not exiling you, it's initiating you. You are being called back to yourself. Solitude is not a void, it's a mirror. It reflects everything you've avoided, but also everything you're becoming. What's being taken away is only making room for what your soul truly needs. And what's uncomfortable now is shaping who you're destined to be. In these moments, you learn to choose healing over distraction, alignment over approval, and clarity over chaos. You stop asking for permission to be who you are. You stop reaching for the noise. You start listening. You start becoming. Carl Jung understood this sacred process. He knew that when the shadow rises, it isn't there to shame you. It's there to reveal what's unhealed, to show you the parts of yourself that are still waiting to be integrated. Solitude brings those parts into the light not to break you, but to make you whole. So when everything around you grows quiet, don't run. Don't rush to fill the space. Because this silence is not the end of your story. It's the space where the next chapter begins. Have you ever embraced solitude as a time for inner rebuilding? If yes, share how it transformed you in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else. If not, comment, "I'm ready to grow," so we can walk this path of healing and strength together. 6. After solitude comes integration. After solitude, You don't just return to life, you return transformed. The silence you sat in wasn't empty. It was sacred. It rewired your soul. It peeled away the noise of the world so that you could finally hear your own truth. And now, that truth must be lived. You're not the same. And because of that, life cannot look the same either. Your relationships begin to shift. What once felt familiar now feels hollow. Surface-level connections, small talk, the roles you used to play, they no longer hold you. You crave something more: presence, depth, vulnerability. Some people will drift away because they only knew how to love the version of you that was still asleep. But don't chase what's fading. You're being aligned with what's real. A spiritual awakening alters the frequency of your being, and those who can no longer feel your energy are not meant to follow you forward. Priorities rearrange themselves without force. You stop performing, stop proving, stop pleasing. What once seemed urgent now feels irrelevant. You begin choosing alignment over achievement, rest over rush, peace over performance. Your attention sharpens. You start to protect your time, your space, your energy, because now you understand how sacred they truly are. This phase is not about learning more. It's about embodying what you already know. You walk differently, speak more consciously, listen more deeply. Everything about you softens and strengthens at the same time. The way you respond, the way you forgive, the way you honor your own boundaries, it all reflects the transformation that solitude gave birth to. This is not ego. This is rootedness. And rooted people move with grace that doesn't need to announce itself. But integration is not always peaceful. It's lonely. It's confusing. You may find yourself in rooms that once felt like home, now feeling like a stranger. People may question you, misunderstand you, even mock your shift. Let them. You are not shrinking anymore to be accepted by those who refuse to grow. Your discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is the evidence of growth. You're being stretched, not broken. Life is testing your alignment, asking, will you live what you've learned or retreat into who you were? Solitude wasn't exile, it was initiation. And now, this is the rite of passage. This is where your awakening takes form. Not in what you say, but in how you live. Not in how much you know, but in how deeply you've changed. Integration is the quiet daily decision to keep choosing your truth even when it costs you comfort. You are not going back. You are not meant to. The path ahead is unfamiliar because it was carved for the version of you that's only now beginning to emerge. This is your rebirth, subtle, sacred, and entirely your own. If you've felt your soul shifting through solitude and now sense a new version of yourself emerging, type, I am ready to live my truth in the comments. Let this be your declaration of integration, alignment, and authenticity. 7. Solitude leads to inner power and service. Solitude is not a punishment. It's a sacred rite of passage, a divine pause where the universe calls you inward, away from the noise, so you can rediscover your own voice. Most people fear being alone because they mistake it for rejection. But spiritual wisdom teaches us that the most powerful transformations do not occur in the presence of others. They unfold in the silence of solitude. It is in this quiet, often uncomfortable space that you begin to remember who you truly are beneath all the masks, labels, and expectations. Those who surrender to solitude do not come out the same. They emerge with a grounded peace that doesn't rely on the opinions of others. They no longer seek validation in likes, attention, or approval because they've tapped into something far deeper than their own soul. Carl Jung called this process of individuation the journey of becoming whole. And for this journey to begin, something must be stripped away. Distraction, noise, superficial connection. What remains is the raw self. Vulnerable, yes, but also powerful beyond measure. In this sacred silence, you meet your fears and your longings. You confront your wounds. You see the parts of yourself you once avoided. And yet, the deeper you go, the more you find that none of these shadows define you. Instead, they become gateways to your inner strength. You begin to realize that peace doesn't come from what surrounds you. It flows from what anchors you. And nothing anchors a soul more deeply than solitude embraced with trust. And something beautiful happens along the way. Your presence begins to carry weight, not the kind that seeks attention, but the kind that commands stillness. People feel safer around you. They sense the clarity in your words, the depth in your gaze, the calm in your energy. Without even trying, you become a vessel of healing, because the energy that once shattered you has now been alchemized into wisdom. The silence that once haunted you has become your sanctuary, and the isolation that once felt like exile has become the birthplace of your purpose. True power is quiet. It doesn't need a stage. It simply is. Those who have walked through the valley of loneliness with open hearts carry this power naturally. They don't impose, they inspire. They don't instruct, they embody. Through their stillness, they hold space for others to soften, to reflect, to feel. This is the sacred service born from solitude, not by force, but by authenticity. And this is what spiritual wisdom looks like in its most radiant form. When you are isolated by the universe, it is not to break you, it is to awaken you. You're not being hidden, you're being refined. The solitude is sculpting you into someone the world needs but isn't quite ready for. And when you return, you'll return not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to be. Not louder, not more decorated, but more true, more whole, more you. To affirm your inner strength and purpose, declare your alignment with this path. Comment below. I rise through solitude to honor your journey and inspire others to discover the quiet power within themselves. So if you've been feeling isolated, remember this isn't punishment, it's preparation. The universe may be pulling you away from the noise so you can finally hear your soul. In solitude, the truth begins to rise, and your transformation takes root. If this message touched your heart, let it guide your next steps. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And be sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the powerful insights we have coming your way. You're not alone, you're being aligned. Keep walking your path with courage,